Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
Accomplishment Coaching is proud to present the following fine programming. Accomplishment Coaching, where coaches lead and leaders coach. AccomplishmentCoaching.com.
Welcome to the Coaching Show with your host, Master Certified Coach Christopher McAuliffe.
Thank you, Dick Warren, and thank you, my dear listener, for being with us again for another exciting edition of the Coaching Show. Today, you've chosen wisely to be listening today, because today is that once in a quarter, that blue moon opportunity, that once in a while, but not too often time, that we get to talk to somebody from the International Coach Federation. Not only are we going to be talking to him, he's the guy in charge of research and education, and he's been with us before. He's dynamic. He knows a lot about a lot of stuff, and this is going to be a good hour of my day, and I trust yours too. Let's see. We need to let you know a couple of things. First of all, full disclosure, we're a media partner with the International Coach Federation. We are proud to be in our fourth year of media partnership. That means that they like us enough to partner, and we love them, of course. So we're delighted to partner with the International Coach Federation, and it's an opportunity for us to support the folks involved in the association and the fine work that they do on behalf of coaches everywhere. The International Coach Federation, also known as the ICF, is the leading global organization dedicated to advancing the coaching profession. They do that by setting high standards, by providing independent certification, the PCC, MCC, and ACC certifications that coaches work so hard for, as well as by building a worldwide network of trained coaching professionals, and by accrediting those coach training opportunities, including coach training programs, the CCEUs that we get from things we participate in, and more. It's the world's largest organization of professionally trained coaches, and it thereby elicits instant credibility for all of its members, including me. And I trust you. The ICF is committed to connecting professional coaches with the tools and resources we need to succeed in our careers. To learn more about the ICF, to stay up to date on the latest news, to find out about things like we're going to find out about today, as well as the events like the upcoming Converge Conference and the last Converge Conference, which was the first international global conference that they've had in about 5 years, go to coachfederation.org. And of course, you can follow them on Twitter at ICFHQ. We have an ICF representative on this year's show, the coaching show, each and every quarter to let you know about the goings on, and today is that day. First, let me introduce you to an extraordinary coach, a delightful human being, a great, talented entertainer, Kacey Cardin. She's a life, leadership, and business coach, a creative multipreneur. That's a title I'm so stealing, creative multipreneur. She's a graduate of Vanderbilt University, the University of Tennessee, and Accomplishment Coaching. She maintains a flourishing coaching practice. Her clients can be found thriving at companies including Google, Etsy, Disney, and some of New York's top finance firms, on your television screen, on your Kindle. She is a talent herself and supports people in living a more powerful and fully expressed life. Kacey Cardin, hello.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I got a little thing. You would look around outside. Where are you today?
I'm in Brooklyn today.
Brooklyn.
Yep.
Don't you have to say it that way? I thought that was a thing. All right. You tell us about yourself, because you're not just a coach. You're like also a performing artist. Give us a little middle A there.
It's true. I am a creative multipreneur. I am an opera singer. I just actually starred in the world's first virtual reality opera.
Dang.
So if you guys are curious about that, you can go to Samsung VR's website and look up the Parksville Murders. It is a horror opera.
Really? Aren't they all? I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
I mean, somebody usually does die in them, so
True.
sort of, yeah. In this one, I'm mostly dead in a bathtub. It's it's interesting, but it's pretty groundbreaking, and that's part of what I love about performance is doing creative, groundbreaking, experimental works, like actually works that get you out of your comfort zone as a performer. So it all kind of ties together for me with coaching. I also help produce and perform in an opera burlesque show here in New York City once a month.
Opera, wait a minute, hold on, let me get that. Opera burlesque. Okay, all right, I'm with you.
Indeed, yes. You can go to laoperaburlesque.com and check it out for yourselves. Yeah, what else am I working on? Just did
That you
an
can tell us
orchestra
about.
concert, all sorts of things. I'm in Girls Night, the musical. I'm in a touring musical.
Wow.
And throughout all of that, also coaching clients during the day.
That's amazing. And based on what you've said, all your clients aren't also opera singers or performers. You have some of those as well as your big corporate people?
I actually do not have a lot of opera singers on my current client roster. I have some writers, some actors, a lot of people who are working in other places, but have some sort of creative spirit or a creative, hunger that they want to figure out what to do with. So people who are also, in that sense, multipreneurs. They're passionate about a lot of different things, and they're kind of figuring out how to tie it all together and fit it all in while also, having a life and
Nice.
relationships and friends and all that good stuff.
Nice.
So
And you're here to tell us it is possible.
it is totally possible. It's not just possible, but it's super exciting and fun and fulfilling.
There's been a time in my practice where my practice changed, my coaching practice. There was a time where I was dealing with only people on relationship issues. There was a time when I was dealing with only creative artists, composers, bands, performers, all kinds of people like that. And then there was a time that I was only dealing with corporate execs. Do you want to know? Do you want to know what the most fun was?
What's the most fun?
The crazy creative artists. They're
Crazies.
they're insane sometimes. Like the things that they'll bring to coaching, it's just like I've actually never had this before.
I love it.
yeah.
And and there's that creative spirit. There's also a lot of hunger there. People are they're just like hungry and ambitious and so driven to get it out into the world. Their creativity it's just bursting from them, and it makes people so fun to coach when they're that ready and hungry for something. So
Yeah. Not so much when they're bursting, but the other thing. All right. Well, it's delightful to have you here, and thanks for joining us from your palatial manse in Brooklyn. Listen, as I said, our guest today, he is an extraordinary guy. We're delighted to welcome him back. He's been here before, and what a cool job. Mark Ruth, have you heard him before? Have you talked to him before? Do you know this guy?
I have not.
Oh.
I've done some homework
So
before the show today, so I'm super excited to meet him.
good job in the 27 minutes you had before. Okay, good. Mark,
I'm a fast learner.
Mark Ruth is the Director of Research and Education. He's been with us before. He joined the International Coach Federation more than a decade ago, and he's dedicated, I'm going to practice my English language and enunciation, most of his time developing and expanding the ICF's global research and education departments. Among his many duties have been the oversight of nearly a dozen global industry studies on the coaching industry since 2006. Before joining ICF, when he was a young, carefree man, Mark served as a market research analyst for the National Tour Association, where he managed an economic impact study of the North American group travel industry. We're delighted to welcome back to our microphones Mark Ruth. Hello, sir.
Well, hello, Christopher. Thanks for having me back, and it's very nice to meet you, Kacey.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
This is so polite. This is more polite than most of the social gatherings I've been to recently.
We'll see where we go from here.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Kacey, do you want to get up in this piece about how the ICF and PricewaterhouseCoopers work together on studies?
Mm-hmm. Tell us all about it, Mark.
Oh, really?
I'd be happy to.
All
Do you have
right,
a specific question, or I can just kind of give you a little background for those that maybe aren't aware?
Yeah.
As you mentioned in your introduction, Christopher, we've done now nearly a dozen studies over the last 10 years. PwC's been involved with all but one of these studies, really, and they've just been a really valued thought leader for us. Not only are they extremely accomplished in terms of global research, but they're also a firm that uses coaching quite extensively. So they understand coaching. They certainly understand the ICF, and I just can't imagine trying to take on such ambitious industry studies like this without a partner like PwC.
Now that's great praise for them, but I want to, in case people are starting to nod off around studies or industry studies, we actually learn stuff from this. You're a guy in charge of not only research but education, which means we got to get some takeaways here that we can use. Will you give us? I know you've done this before, not quite every 5 years, right? Did it in 2010? Was that the first one?
Of this particular study, this is the third time we've completed it. And the study, I guess I should mention, is called the Global Consumer Awareness Study. We've done different studies with PWCs over the time. We've done, in fact, a global coaching study, which is more about the practitioners. We've also done that 3 times, but this is the most recent rendition of the Consumer Awareness Study that we're talking about.
And you started the first one was in 2010, then you did it again in 2014, and now 2017. How come the acceleration here? Is there more to learn? Are we finding that the consumer of coaching is changing a lot faster than we expected?
Absolutely. I think the reason we began this particular design of study, and just so everyone knows that these are grassroots consumers all around the world. The only thing they have in common really is that they meet a certain age and other demographic requirements. But beyond that, we have no preconceived notions that any of them have any awareness of coaching or have participated in coaching. So when we first commissioned the study in 2010, it was because ICF had done a lot of research on its own membership and of the coaching profession, a little bit of navel gazing, if you like, but we really hadn't done any external evaluation of how we were perceived or the profession was from just general consumers around the world. So that's what was the impetus behind the 2010 study. And to your point earlier about the repeating of the study, we're actually changing quite rapidly around the world in terms of the composition of our membership. So we want to try to adapt this particular study, change the nations that are involved to where it's always relevant to the global coaching profession. And so as we're becoming more dispersed as a membership, right now we have fewer than 50% of our members are in North America. That was very, very different when I started 11 years ago. We were almost 3/4 of our membership in North America at that time.
Yeah.
So we have to continually add nations to the study to still cross a meaningful threshold. In this case, it's about 90% of our membership critical mass is represented in these nations that were studied. And we also, because we're global, have to continue to offer it in and support it in other languages.
Right.
So you may have seen that we've delivered this particular study in 17 different languages.
Holy bajoli. I didn't know there were 17. I'm kidding. All right. I want to ask you everything all at the same time, but let's start with, so how is the consumer and consumer awareness of coaching changing?
Well, changing over time, you have to contextualize that, I think, Christopher, into the age of the consumer and really where they live in the world. For anybody that may have already seen the global coaching study work that we did with PwC, back in 2012, we really redesigned that to identify what we would consider an established or an emerging market for coaching. And if you think about it in terms of geography, North America, Western Europe, and also Oceania or Australia are really our established markets. Coaching's been around for the longest period of time in those areas. The infrastructure is really supporting coaching, so you have more training schools in those areas, and of course more coaches. So when you look at contrasting that with the emerging markets, so Eastern Europe, Latin America, Asia, and of course recently Middle East and Africa has been very active. You notice that the actual practitioners are different. They are younger by and large in the emerging regions. They obtain their training in different ways. And so when we really uncovered this dichotomy, we also noticed that their clients were different. I think coaches who were at least initially established in North America or Western Europe, they've been around for a little bit longer. So they have had to sell coaching, if you like, to their constituents and their potential customers around the world, because people were still trying to figure out what coaching was when they gave it a start, really. In the emerging regions, I think coaching has already begun to take on. There's a little bit of an excitement in some of these areas. There's a novelty factor, perhaps. Organizations are embracing coaching a little bit earlier in their in their life cycle. So I think to your question about the consumers, it only makes sense to study how the consumers are reacting in these regions. And that is where you do see quite a bit of differences, not only in the age of the consumer, but also where they happen to live.
Wow. Let's get Kacey in here. Kacey, what do you want to know?
I'm actually curious about what you guys discovered about the millennial consumer. There's a lot of buzz around appealing to millennials and what are millennials buying and how do we, sell to them, grab their attention. What did this study reveal about that?
Well, there is a lot of depth on all the generations, but of course, everyone, when you talk about the different generations, they kind of immediately want to go to millennials. They are a large cohort in terms of categorization. In fact, they're so massive, and just so everyone knows, we're talking really about people born between, say, 1983 and 96. We actually have subcategorized them into 3 different distinct groups because they take on very different personas. So young millennials, that's those like 21 to 24-year-olds. Then you'd have a core millennial, 25 to 30, and then mature millennials. So 31 to 34 years old, they're almost at the cusp of being Gen Xers. If you think about how different individuals will be within these 3 bands of millennials, they couldn't be more different. I mean, they're different ages and stages in their lives. Young millennials, some of them are still in college or just out of college, maybe getting their first jobs. Whereas mature millennials,
We have to come, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have to come up with a different title for that third group.
Oh, the mature millennials?
Yeah, have you met them? Because we can't call them that. I'm sorry, keep going.
Mature in age, not necessarily development, I'll say.
Yeah,
I have a couple of them in my house as well.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
No, but that's a great point. But they're starting to form their own families, Christopher. So I mean, they really it's unfair to characterize them as the same as the younger part of that generational band. So I guess to your point, we do know that millennials have a higher level of awareness about coaching. So on this study, one of the benefits of the consumer awareness study is we go in with, again, as I said, no preconceived notions. So we ask them just kind of indicators. Are you aware of the field of professional business and or life coaching? Just so we don't get any confusions about, say, the athletic side of coaching. Right. And, if you cut the 27,000 surveys that we collected for this study into the generational bands, millennials had the highest level of awareness out of all the generations. Now, let me identify the generations. One of the reasons we expanded the study, not only in terms of nations, but we also began an exercise in allowing younger consumers to participate. Wow. So the first 2 times we did the study, we cut off the threshold at anyone 25 years or older. For this study, we actually allowed people who were 18 and older. So when we did that, it really unearthed Generation Z. So some people have called this the Homeland generation. I mean, we're still kind of figuring out what we want to call this generation, but these are people that are really 20 and younger. They are also demonstrating different characteristics than millennials. So you have essentially the youngest that we studied was Gen Z, all the millennials, Gen X, just a little bit older than millennials. Those are 35 to 52-year-olds currently. Baby boomers, that's a very large cohort, 53 to 71 years old. And then, of course, we actually even studied people that were older than that. We combined what they would call, say, the greatest or the silent generations into one group. So anyone over 72 years. And so we have actually quite a few responses from all of those individuals.
That's awesome. What I'd love to get at least one takeaway from the boomers. What are you finding as people are getting into what we used to call the golden years, but more and more, I think a lot of those folks actually become coaches. Any surprising takeaways or any big changes from previous research in that group?
Well, absolutely. I mean, some of this will be anecdotal, but without a doubt, in terms of those supplying the coaching, at least within the ICF membership, baby boomers represent the largest segment. Without a doubt. They, on this survey that we completed, the study here, we had a significant response from baby boomers. In fact, it was, if you think about it, the very youngest responses, that Gen Z, we had about 4% of the responses from them and about 4% from the greatest or silent generation. But we had about a third of the responses on this survey from baby boomers. And that allowed us to do a lot of cross-tabulation data when we got to the analysis stage. But if you think about it in terms of overall awareness, they already had quite a bit of heightened awareness about coaching. And over time, we've noticed that I don't want to use the term novelty effect too much, because I mentioned a moment ago and talking about established versus emerging regions. But I think what we've learned from other studies is as coaches become that age group, they're also by and large transitioning into different types of coaching. So if you look at the life cycle, you might start off after you get your coach training and you're trying to establish your practice. You may be what people would typically refer to as a life coach or a life vision enhancement coach. What we've noticed from other studies is once they get to about that 3 to 5 year mark in their experience, many of them will transition into the organizational coaching sector. When they do that, by default, their client base changes somewhat. Right. They'll start to coaching people in an organizational context, which also means they're coaching on different areas, but also their clients are going to skew a little bit older. So I guess Gen X and Gen Z couldn't be more different, but baby boomers and Gen X have a little bit of the same characteristics in terms of their ability to understand what coaching is. There's one thing that's pretty ironic. I mentioned earlier about millennials having a heightened level of awareness of what coaching was. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they think it is. So if you go and kind of drill down a little bit, when we asked them if they had awareness of of professional business or life coaching, they were the generation that represented the highest level of awareness. Later on, we do a little checks and balances on that, and we provide some definitions of not only coaching, but other modalities such as consulting and training and mentoring and even therapy or counseling. Mm-hmm. And we don't list those names of those modalities, but we list what we would consider an appropriate definition, and we ask them to say, which of these do you think coaching is? Yeah. And they weren't always right about that, millennials. Sometimes they would confuse it with mentoring.
Interesting. That's you, Kacey. That's your problem. It's your generation. That's why we brought Kacey in. She's young. She is one of these people. We're trying to explain what coaching is to her.
I'm actually just over the line of a millennial. I'm more mature than the mature millennial.
Well, you don't seem it.
I don't know what this means. Surprise!
You crazy creative
you always
artist.
seem like a mature millennial yourself. Let's be real here.
Yeah, maturity. We got to take that term out. What did you want to get to, Kacey?
Well, so I'm curious about what either from the research or from, our collective expertise, what do we do with this result, knowing that there are people out there who aren't clear on what coaching actually is or is not, how do we actually implement to make changes around that?
That's a really great question. And I struggle with this a little bit, Kacey, because, again, I have a different perspective working at ICF as long as I have. So 11 years when I first began here, there was a lot of that very intentional education. We were almost trying to protect what we define coaching to be. Right. So we spent a lot of time saying, here's what it's not. It's not consulting. It's not mentoring. It's not athletic coaching, certainly. But that wasn't always a given when I began here. I have seen it evolve into more readily apparent around the world of what coaching is. So we've actually been working with coaches to help them develop their businesses over time. We do this wonderful business development series. And one of the takeaways that, say, a branding consultant might share with them is, don't put on your website what coaching is. We're past that. Say who you are. Say how you embody your specialty and who you aim to attract to your coaching practice. So you don't have to bother with saying what coaching is. But then when I see the results from this study, I'm not so sure. I think it absolutely depends on where in the world you might live and the age of the potential client. You may need to provide some of that background justification to explain the coaching process and how it differs from other modalities.
Well, this is fascinating stuff, and the application, of course, I think one of my favorite things, Mark, about your position is that you're in charge of research and education. So you actually can see the results of something like this and immediately see the educational need or the opportunity to provide more education. Is it sometimes confounding for you to have both roles? You know what? I asked that question, and then I looked at the clock. From now on, I'm going to look at the clock first and then ask my question because I've found out we're about to take a break. Will you remember the question or allow me to ask it again when we come back?
I will. It's a great question, and I will remember it.
Thank you so much. Professional radio podcasting people. Don't try this stuff at home. All right. Kacey, Cardin, how do people get a hold of you if they've fallen in love with the dulcet tones and want to work with you immediately?
Well, I don't know how they couldn't have fallen in love with this already. You can reach me at www.creativemultipreneur.com or www.CaceyCardinCoaching.com.
Oh, that's
which
easy.
You probably need to spell.
Right.
I actually need to spell either one of them.
Exactly. We got millennials listening. That's right. I said it. Kacey Cardin is KACEYCARDIN. .com, or you can go to Creative Multipreneur, MULTIPRENEUR.com. Mark, do you want people to leave you alone, or do you want people to find out more? Oh, I know. They should get the study, right?
They absolutely should. And there's other studies I could direct them to, but for this particular one that we've been discussing, absolutely go to the website, coachfederation.org/Consumer Study 2017. That's a landing page. You can download anything you need from the study.
And it's for free for ICF members like me, or $15 for non-members. Such a deal. All right, when we come back, more the entire hour with Mark Ruth, the Director of Research and Education for the International Coach Federation, and our special not in studio, but just as special guest co-host today, Kacey Cardin. You're listening to The Coaching Show right here on WSRadio.com, the worldwide leader in talk. Back in a moment.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Are you seeking to change your career to something that is both fulfilling and challenging? Do you want to help people reach their full potential and strive to achieve their dreams? Would you like to inspire those around you and help create a better world? If you're serious about a career change or just want to explore the craft of personal coaching, contact Accomplishment Coaching. With locations across the country in Washington, D.C., Seattle, Chicago, New York City, and San Diego, Accomplishment Coaching is the leading institution in personal coaching. Our staff carefully monitors the entire program, live during the training process, and have met the strict standards of ICF International to achieve accreditation. Through a focus on quality instruction rather than endless modules of training, Accomplishment Coaching will guide you from your very first step all the way to becoming one of the finest coaches in the world. Visit AccomplishmentCoaching.com to learn more. Accomplishment Coaching, where coaches lead and leaders coach.
Christopher McAuliffe is your source for the latest in the world of personal coaching. Whether it be speaking with such luminaries as Deepak Chopra or getting the newest techniques and innovation, the Coaching Show is always on the cutting edge of what's happening now.
Gotham Books presents Marriage Rules by Harriet Lerner. The book Martha Beck calls required reading for anyone hoping to interact successfully with any other human, not just for those in romantic relationships. Get your copy wherever books and ebooks are sold, and visit harrietlerner.com to learn how to change your marriage today.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the coaches training program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
Accomplishment Coaching is proud to present the following fine programming. Accomplishment Coaching, where coaches lead and leaders coach. AccomplishmentCoaching.com.
Welcome back to the Coaching Show with your host, Master Certified Coach Christopher McAuliffe.
Thank you, Dick Warren. And my dear listener, if you, first of all, thanks for being here. Thank you for listening. We've been doing this for, 14 years each and every week, and we couldn't do it without you, and we do not take you for granted. Okay, some of you we do. I know I didn't contact you on your birthday this year. I feel bad about that, but thanks for listening anyway. What we need to let you know is, well, first of all, Kacey Cardin is here. She's our special guest co-host today. She's a coach and a creative multipreneur who's a coach for creative multipreneurs out of Brooklyn, New York, and sometimes Tennessee. Kacey, I know that you are like me in one regard, which is when you go looking for training in terms of your coach training, in terms of becoming a coach, deciding to take the plunge and get the training that you want, that you need to be a great professional coach, you turned to the world's finest coach training program. You went looking for the finest in the world, as did I, and you found it at Accomplishment Coaching. Accomplishment Coaching is, from the very beginning, designed to be the finest coach training program in the world. It's not for everyone. It's available currently in 6 cities in North America, and it's a year-long program that includes a coach for you each and every week through the year of the program. It's a coach provided by the company. It's a coach who's been trained by them. It's one of the most consistent, integrity-filled programs I've ever found, and it's designed to have you thriving as a coach. Kacey, I know you did the Accomplishment Coaching program. What do you have to say about it? What are your thoughts? Kacey? Did we lose
anybody?
Kacey? Oh, there we go. Sorry, didn't push the right
Am I
button.
here?
Yeah, now.
Oh, got it. Okay. I said absolutely life-changing. Those are the first words out of my mouth. I graduated from the program in 2015. After starting the coaching journey a couple of years before that, sort of mentoring with some people, exploring some different programs, looking around at, going back to school for different degrees and that sort of thing. As a person who has a master's degree and, went to Vanderbilt, like education, academia is really important to me. So it was really important that I found a program that reflected exceptionally high standards, but was also really, really well-rounded. So not just business coaching or not just, health coaching, that sort of thing. So what I really loved about one of those academic things, I really was drawn to the well-roundedness and versatility of the training and education with Accomplishment Coaching, and with the people. I went into an observation, kind of the try it before you buy it that Accomplishment Coaching offers, which is totally unique to Accomplishment Coaching. I don't know any other program that actually lets you come in and watch the training before you say yes. And it was a year that completely changed my life. Great. Amazing. My career is totally different. Relationships, finances, like the whole picture, just a world of difference.
Great. So if you are moved to find out more about the world's finest coach training program, as Kacey said, you could go and observe the training program. This is, as far as I know, the only training company in the world that allows you to come in and observe the training program in process. You get to see behind the curtain. You get to see what's in the black box. Before you've agreed to anything, before you register, or you don't have to register, it's just an opportunity to come and see what coach training is all about. Check it out, accomplishmentcoaching.com. Kacey, can you name the 6 cities in the world where people can find Accomplishment Coaching?
I sure hope so. Let's see. We've got New York City.
Yeah.
We've got DC, Chicago, Seattle, San Diego, and Victoria, Canada.
That's right, Victoria, British Columbia, and Canada. You win a prize. The prize, okay, I don't have a prize. I'm sorry, but exactly. All right, thank you for that moment of promotion. And now we get back to our interview today. We're spending the entire day, the entire hour with Mark Ruth. He's the Director of Research and Education, has been at the International Coach Federation for more than a decade, I think celebrating his 11th year there. He's overseeing all the research that's being done, but also, as we were talking about just before the break, the education department. We're finding out that the ICF and PricewaterhouseCoopers has just conducted and published the Global Consumer Awareness Study of 2017, a study that was done in 2010, 2014, and now this year. You can find that by going to coachfederation.org. That's the ICF website, coachfederation.org/consumer study 2017. That's Consumer Study 2017. Mark, just before the break, I was talking to you about the dual role there. Lots of people are in charge of either research or education. How do you take on the challenge of both?
So I think when I began, of course, we weren't the staff that we are now in terms of the number of global employees working for ICF. So everybody was doing more than what they should have been doing, but it was just always kind of a natural fit, I think, to have the information you collected be immediately, the insights that you gleaned from that immediately turned into some sort of learning opportunity. And the team has been built around the work that I began way back when, and now I think we're probably closer to 10 employees than we are one. So it's not me doing the work, it's me just having a little foot in both camps really at this point. But I have to tell you, it's extremely rewarding because you can observe the findings from either a member survey or an industry study like this, and you think something's interesting, but it's always viewed through my lens or my bias. It's really heartening when you're able to develop, say, a conference presentation or a virtual learning opportunity and get the feedback that, oh, this is something valuable to a coach practitioner. Or recently we've done quite a bit of research on the organizational coaching spectrum. And so our work with the Human Capital Institute has allowed us to really focus exclusively on organizational coaching. But I really feel like it's kind of a labor of love, and the people I work with are really passionate about it as well. So I think I could give you a really good example of a success story from this study. Earlier, when we began our talk, you mentioned Converge. That was our international conference we completed just back in August in Washington, D.C. Very successful event, sold out event. But we did this, and I think you've talked to some of my colleagues about the reimagining of this conference. We actually had physical space we called neighborhoods that were designed around the content. And we had one called Development Zone, and that was designed to have content featured there that would help a coach develop their practice, but also how organizations could build a coaching culture. We took the results from this study, this global consumer awareness study, and developed a custom presentation, and it was called something like, the minds of the different generations, or basically what do you need to know as a practitioner from the consumers that participated in this study. And Colin McElhaney, who's the global research director for PwC, presented the talk. It was really fascinating, the response we got from that, and the takeaways that we were able to provide coaches. So when they say, okay, this data it's interesting, but what does it mean for how I operate on a day-to-day basis? And we had some really great conversations about, okay, so the generations don't react the same to messaging around coaching because their understanding is different. That they seek coaching for different reasons. You understand these things, and you really need to understand that as the age and stage of your client changes, so will their needs and how they use coaching. And I know it sounds very obvious when I say something like that. But for the practitioners that were listening to the talk in DC, they thought, well, what does this mean for my website?
Right.
What does this mean for how I prospect my leads? How do I, like, is my website even relevant for a millennial? Will they take one look at it and go, this is horrific? So I think all they needed, some of them, was some validation that this wasn't ICF saying to them, this is what you should do. This is what consumers say they want. And because we're a standard setting body, but we also have an individual credential, which I know you hold, Christopher.
Indeed.
We ask questions about, okay, consumers, tell us what value credentials have. And we didn't say the ICF credential. We said certifications or credentials. It was, the people in the audience were blown away when the consumers were telling them, not only do I look for my coach's credential, but when I have not only been aware of coaching but participated and were asked about the satisfaction, we were able to provide compelling evidence that consumers who were coached by a credentialed coach had way higher levels of satisfaction, were more likely to recommend coaching to others. And, again, that might seem obvious, but we sometimes hear people that are members of the ICF saying, well, I'm a member, but I don't really tell people I'm a member, or I'm a credential holder, but my clients don't ask for it. Well, that doesn't mean they don't care about it. Maybe you should be leading with that message.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Kacey, got a credential?
I'm one call away from my PCC, you guys.
Yeah.
Any day now. Any day. Super excited. Yeah. This conversation, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this was what was on my mind before the break when you were talking about the awareness of what coaching is and isn't, and how credentialing plays into that part of education and things like that. So aside from, I'm hearing you say it's important for us as coaches to actually talk about it and educate our clients and potential clients. Are there other takeaways for us as coaches on how to get this out into the world and how to use this information to make a difference for more people?
Yeah, I think so. I think the minimum is that the consumer is more savvy than maybe some coaches give them credit for being. So, and interestingly, we had people that had never participated in a coaching relationship that were a part of this study. We didn't, shut them out once we learned that. We asked them questions as well, because it's good to get that companion perspective. We asked them about coaching credentials, even if they, hadn't participated in coaching. Well, still yet, do you think it's important for a professional coach to have a credential? Absolutely. If I could just provide that one takeaway that spanned all generations was, regardless of the generational category they may fall into, they really underscore the importance of that seal of credential, because it means something. It's a mark of security.
Mark, are there any other really important, essential takeaways from the research and from this 2017 study that we haven't hit on yet?
Well, I think, you don't want me to just drop a bunch of statistics on you, but what I will say is, trending. So there's a categorization here I have to provide you. While there were 30 nations in this most recent study, we have certain questions that we can ask and gain trending information for the nations that have participated in all 3 studies. So that's 16 of the 30 nations this year have been in that core group of nations that have been with us since 2010.
Right.
So when we have that opportunity and we can benchmark some really key indicators, and indicators being awareness of coaching, participation in coaching, and then of course satisfaction with coaching, I think a really key takeaway, and ICF can't just take credit for this, of course, it's the schools, it's the practitioners, it's people having great success with coaching, but I'm happy to say that within these 16 core nations, and they think they represent about 3/4 of ICF's critical mass, these 16 countries, awareness of coaching has risen steadily since 2010. So when I say awareness of coaching, that would be people that said, I'm either somewhat or very aware. If you combine those two responses, it was 54% in 2010. So just 7 years later, that number has risen to 68%.
Nice.
But more importantly, the very awares have almost doubled. It's from 14% to 23%. Those are really, really positive. To say they're positive is an understatement, because not only has the awareness grown in those 16 nations, but coaching has grown outside. And I mean, we're in 130 countries, ICF is now. So if awareness is growing globally and so are we, then it only stands to reason that more people would participate in coaching. That has also come through in this. But the best news of all, I think, is the satisfaction continues to soar. In 2010, much like I gave you the awareness statistic, 35% who had participated as the coachee in a coaching relationship, very satisfied with the coaching process. Another 48 were somewhat satisfied. So that combined to be about an 83% statistic. That number is now up to 90, but the very satisfied has gone from 35 to 50.
Great.
Those are compelling figures.
That is compelling. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to ask you to comment on something that I think is big in our country and society, at least right now, and also coming up, I think, big in coaching. As I go to the Converge conference and the ACTO conferences and some others, I'm noticing more and more we as coaches are aware of and looking into our own bias, our own sort of culture and power relationships, and we're just sort of generally looking at what our blind spots are. I know that it may not be the right study, the global awareness study in terms of consumer awareness, but are there studies that you either got planned or that are in process that are addressing any of this, or are you learning anything about the impact of coach bias or power and culture in coaching?
I will say that we don't have that as a topic in any of the industry research we've done thus far. I will tell you on the education side, we do the education team does a horizon scan semi-annually, and we kind of, we know what we're talking about. We know what our members want to learn, but we also watch what kind of other organizations that intersect with coaching, what are they delivering training on? What are they featuring at their conferences? The subject of unconscious bias, so that's not only for the coach themselves, but for their clients that they're hoping to, raise their awareness. That is a topic that has had steady popularity. I think that you couldn't provide enough training on that subject. In fact, at Converge, we did have some presenters that did talk about unconscious bias. And then as far as essentially, I think you were alluding to like a power dynamic in cultural spectrums. I think diversity and inclusion is also a very popular topic. I think that there are some communities of practice that the ICF has right now that talk about this on a somewhat regular basis, but we definitely have that on our radar in terms of an educational topic area, and I think people that went to Converge would have recognized that we did feature that. Indeed, yeah. I'm also giving a talk on it next month, so I was looking for a leg up there. If you could study it really quick, I'd appreciate it. All right. Well, let's talk about what is coming up. You've got studies always going on. What are you excited about that's it's either going on now or on the horizon? Well, in terms of industry research, it was a very, very busy year. In 2017, we released not this study, but actually two industry studies. So in addition to the consumer awareness study, we also released what was our fourth in 4 years studies on building a coaching culture. So I really would encourage anybody, especially if they're interested in the notion of building a coaching culture and how it impacts different generations. Our study we just did with the Human Capital Institute, we released that in September, was called Building a Coaching Culture with Millennial Leaders. And this is an important distinction because we talk a lot about how millennials react to coaching. but it's more about the one-to-one relationship that the coach and the coachee have at that moment. What happens when that millennial becomes a leader in the organization and people report to them? So we're trying to observe over time individuals that work in organizations. We also, in this study that I just mentioned, cut it by generation. How are organizations addressing the learning and development for these individuals inside the organization, millennials in particular, but what are they doing for people who are baby boomers or, that are working later and later in their lives? So I would really encourage anybody, if they have time, to go to coachfederation.org/coaching culture, and that landing page features all 4 studies we've released since 2014 with the Human Capital Institute. Again, if you're an ICF member, no cost at all to download that report. And whereas the executive summary for the consumer study is about a 30-page document, the one we released with HCI just in September is almost 40 pages. And it's really great value. So, and answer your question on the industry research side, we're going to breathe a little bit. We're going to continue with the rollout of the findings, and I'm really more excited about what's coming up on the education side in 2018.
Well, tell us.
Well, I mentioned to you that we did Converge. We're already talking about where are we going to go with the next Converge in 2019. So I can tell you the research team and the education team have been scouring the attendee evaluation from from the 2017 event, and also individual breakout sessions. We're going to make some recommendations probably early in 2018 about where that location will be. Nothing to share with you for now. But in the meantime, 2018 is going to be an important year for education, because in years where we do not do Converge as a face-to-face or in-person event, we have really great virtual programming. So the business development series, which we've done twice since 2015, very successful event. We're getting ready to kick that off in 2018. And I knew you'd be interested in this because we were talking about the consumer awareness study.
Right.
The people that attend the business development series in 2018 will actually get some content from Converge provided to them that was recorded, video recorded. So they'll get that as kind of an on-demand package, but then we're going to bring back some of the most popular or best rated or presenters and actually allow them an opportunity to create something new for the business development series. And I can tell you, because we just got confirmation this week that Colin McElhaney, who did the presentation on the consumer study, will be coming back with William Arruda, and they're going to take all of the results from this study and actually translate it and say, what does this mean for the practitioner? What does this mean for your credential coach finder profile? What does this mean for your website, your LinkedIn profile? So we know what consumers think now. Here's what you do with it. So that's going to be one of the earliest sessions we do. And the business development series is going to run from February 6th to March 1st. It's usually going to be 2 live sessions every week. So for those 4 weeks, and I can tell you that registration will open on January 2nd. We will have several hundred people participate. We try to make it as interactive as we can. All the information you'd want to know about the business development series, if they would visit coachfederation.org/BDS, as in business development series. Right now, what you'll see there, Christopher, is a little form to let yourself join a notification list. And then when registration opens, you'll get pinged and it'll say, hey, the content is now available for you to say, I want to go to this, sign me up. And last year, the last time we did this was in 2016, because we actually brought the business development content into Converge in that area that I told you was called the development zone. Right. So this is essentially going to be an every year content opportunity. Some years it may be at Converge, and other years it'll be virtual.
Well, Mark, on behalf of coaches everywhere, I want to thank you for the incredible work you and your teams are doing. We're so excited about this study, and I think everybody just marked their calendar for January 2nd so they could register. We can all register for the Business Development Series in February and March of next year. We've got only about half a minute left or so. Mark, do you want to have a parting thought or a parting shot you'd like to give our 30 or 50 or 1,000 coaches or so?
Well, I just want to thank all of them for spending an hour with us today. I think research is sometimes a tough sell for people joining a conversation like this. I tried not to make it too nerdy. I hope that was successful. But
You're great. All right. Well, thank you for all the work that you do. And what about you, Kacey Cardin? A parting thought or shot for the 30, 40, 50,000 coaches today?
Just a huge thank you. This was actually really fascinating, and I'm actually logging on to the ICF website as we speak to go look at the study in all of its glory. So thank you, Mark, so much for sharing all of this, and thanks, Christopher, for having me on today.
All right. You can, of course, find the International Coach Federation at coachfederation.org, and go ahead and do /consumer study 2017. When you have a moment, go check out creativemultipreneurs.com and say hi to Kacey. And I thank you, dear listener. 14 years of this, and still going strong, still providing great information. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Join culinary masters and legendary winemakers for one of the largest Epicurean celebrations, the 14th annual San Diego Bay Wine and